The true spirit of it is doing or healing without resistance. The hard effort of healing with willpower, with more optimization, with more efficiency is very much distilled down to no. Like, how do we move more in flow? How do we surrender to something that's much bigger than us, that may be guiding us in a way that we cannot see, but our body knows?
My name is Torsten Luedecker, and this is the Wisdom Qigong Uncovered podcast. Welcome everyone, welcome to this episode of the Wisdom Qigong Uncovered podcast. Today, for the second time, I've got Dr. Cynthia Lee with me, and Cynthia is a very experienced Jineng Qigong teacher, and she has put her knowledge into a book, and this is also the reason why we talk today, because this book, if I might just broadly sum it up, is about healing in an effortless way. And I think this is something that all of our audience would be very curious to hear. What does that mean to you, Cynthia?
Effortless healing, that phrase, I adapted it from the translation, right? Effortless doing, which is very Taoist, very much a Qigong, a foundational principle. Really, in practical terms, what we can do with the mind is describe kind of idleness or passivity, like I'm not going to do anything. I kind of need to be resigned and accept my fate. The true spirit of it is doing or healing without resistance, right? So the hard effort of healing with willpower, with more optimization, with more efficiency of, what kind of modalities do I need to do? What Qigong practices do I need to do with great effort is very much distilled down to no. Like, how do we move more in flow? How do we surrender to something that's much bigger than us, that may be guiding us in a way that we cannot see, but our body knows? And can we tap into our intuition? Are there ways that, we can just begin to, I guess a good metaphor is that we can come into this state of flow, which is embodied. It's not just in the mind. It's not just psychological. It's an embodied state, which Qigong practitioners have been cultivating for millennia. And yet sometimes it can still remain elusive. Like, what is that? And so the metaphor is sort of like having everybody knows what a device is, a phone, and it's like having lots of apps open. And so it's just draining batteries. And it's taking up a lot of space. That's actually what happens in the body as well. There are these programs that are running all the time. So even if we're feeling calm, or even if we're feeling clear in the mind, open in the heart, the body might just be still running these programs that have been conditioned to run since the time we were young. And so there's a tremendous energy drain. There's also a tremendous physiological load on the body, because the body, when we're not in a flow state, all the different parts are, they're trying to do their own thing optimally, but they're not really integrated. They're not functioning as one collective being. And so when the mind is in flow, the thinking mind is much quieter, right? It's deeply observing. And then you can go, as many Qigong practitioners know, you can go into this very, very trance-like state as well, which is also flow. But it's hard to operate and live your life that way. So no, you can come into a flow state of deep observation, and you're fully embodied as well. So then opening the heart, inhabiting the body, these are all things, I call it the golden triad. So mind empty, heart open, body inhabited. Those are really foundational to Qigong practice. And yet myself, having had a lot of health challenges, which is what brought me into Qigong as a medical doctor, it was completely outside of my my framework of healing. So that's what brought me in. And even though I was doing the embodied practices and I was doing everything, it was very difficult for me to fully experience embodiment because the body was not a comfortable place to be. This book, this is the galley copy. It's called The Medicine of Flow: Harmonizing Your Inner State for Effortless Healing, is really a synopsis of everything that I've learned and been studying and practicing and experiencing as a human being trying to live her life since 2014, when I came into Zen and Qigong. And then the last, since 2000, I've been deepening into the Mingzhi practice, into pure consciousness and that dimension. Oh, you know what? I wasn't really fully understanding what pure consciousness was. What does embodied consciousness mean? So this is it's a very accessible book in terms of breaking things down and then systematizing it into 7 steps that I then realized, oh, this is the way to systematize the beautiful, intricate, also complex teachings of Zen and Qigong, both on the individual level, collective, and then the universal levels.
I would love to go through these 7 steps with you, Cynthia. But before we do this, I have a question, because you spoke about how effort, trying so hard to heal is not working. And also you spoke about, I love this metaphor about the device with all the open apps that all drain your energy. And now for me, it seems to be like 2 interconnected, but yet separate things. One is that I often think, okay, I've got this disease, I have to fight it. And that obviously means that when I fight something, I'm I'm in conflict, just by the mere fact of fighting it. And being in conflict is obviously not a healing state. So I think this is one of the things I understood. Now, the other thing is, when you talk about shutting down the apps as a metaphor, or closing down all these programs that run in your body. Now, these are often unconscious programs, as you rightly said. Now, how do you identify these programs and how do you shut them down?
Yeah. So those are great points. To your first point, that is, fighting is resistance, right? So there's a role for resistance, and it's growth, it's change, right? Like when we're just one with everything, it's a oneness state. But the change and the growth happens when there's a little bit of resistance, and that's where individual expression happens. That's where individual healing paths happen. So it's there is a role. What happens with chronic illness is the resistance becomes chronic, right? So we stay in that state, and then that is the underlying program that's running in our bodies. So there are many ways, and actually each of the steps that I'm going to go through are ways in which we can transform. So a lot of times, so we have 2 paths in terms of resistance. We can release it or we can transform it, and they're different. So releasing is, again, I'll use a metaphor, it's just easier to understand. If you have a lot of pressure building up in a pot and because the water's boiling and you've got this tight lid on it, right? You can release that pressure valve and it will be helpful, definitely in the short term. But because those patterns are still running, the water's still boiling, and so it will so we can continually release. Now, when we transform, we begin to transform, so there's not so much heat anymore, right? So it's both a release and a transformation. The patterns, the energy expression of this boiling water has actually, it's cooled down. Oh, whoa, what's happening? Oh, there's more light energy now. It's not so much heat. And so then we don't have to expend so much pressure keeping that pressure down, just so that we can live our lives, which is usually what we do. We suppress things, right? So, we have resistance, or, something uncomfortable is coming up, we suppress. Even the phrase we have here in the American West is like, keep calm, stay calm, and carry on. It's kind of an outside in, keep it together, and keep going. So this is really, how do you release it and how do you transform? So you're not continually having to do that. So the beauty of Qigong, the beauty of Mingzhi practices is that we don't even have to really identify any of these things, right? So there are a lot of different, infinite number of methods in healing now. mainstream, alternative, holistic, whatever you want to call it, in terms of ways to identify resistance. Oh, what are your childhood wounds? What are the traumas? And those are helpful, and yet they can also be limiting because we get stuck in the story. And each time we even say the word trauma, something gets triggered. That there's such a strong association with that word, or a lot of other words like wounds. And I hear a lot right now, oh, the world is wounded, right? The world, nature is wounded. Humanity has all these wounds. And that can also, again, it's important to identify, and yet it also keeps us identified. So the the wisdom and the beauty and the simplicity of Zen Qigong is that it's going at the root. So we can just practice and things will begin to transform. We don't even have to know what the story is. We don't have to identify anything.
Right.
One easy way, right, is like for me, when I began practicing Mingzhi and I came into this beautiful empty state of the mind and the heart open, I could still fool myself, my mental frameworks. I could fool myself. I could be like, oh, I feel so at peace with myself, with my family, with the world. And I'm going to respond too, right? It doesn't mean that I just accept everything as it is. It's like, oh, I have a role to respond. How do I bring more harmony into the places where there's disharmony, or more organization into places there's disorder? But then if I go into the body, it's like, oh, the body doesn't lie, right? So why do I still have resistance in my shoulders? Why is that knee bothering me? Why are my hormones acting up this way? So for a lot of people, it might express as emotions. For other people, it might be just perseveration, continual thoughts. So resistance can manifest, in the body, in the heart, and in the mind. But all of the practices in Zen and Qigong, at the essence, they address all of those at the root. So it's simple in that way.
I think this is a great moment to maybe take us through your steps and share a little bit more about the book, which, by the way, for the audience, we obviously have all the details about the books in the show notes, so anyone can just look it up and get access to your wonderful book that you've written here. But maybe you would like to take us a little bit through these steps, or explain in more detail how you're approaching it. And I must reinforce that this is not just a clever idea you came up with. This is really based on many years of experience, many years of practicing, and you are sharing this knowledge and this expertise with your readers here and with our audience, of which I'm very grateful. So please go ahead, Cynthia.
Thank you. And I should add, this is I want to highlight Master Ming Tonggu and teacher Wei Qifeng, who are my primary teachers in this lineage, and also, of course, Dr. Pong. And this is not a book that I wanted to write. It wasn't sort of like, oh, I've experienced all this, and as a doctor, I have the science. So it's a convergence. It's not just a Qigong book. It's a convergence of Qigong with modern science. And what does the science tell us actually about energy fields and consciousness fields, and how do we utilize that in a way to make these ancient teachings more accessible, right? So it's a new thing unto itself. And then we have technology where you're in Cyprus and I'm in California, and we're connected. So we also, in a time where thousands of years ago, when Qigong began, was a very different time. And so people were very, they had small small groups that practiced together. Now we can be interconnected in very, very powerful ways. So all of this can enhance the information. And so I'll just give a little caveat about flow states, is that be careful. People tend to think, oh, I want to cultivate it. Oh, it's like a bliss state. The flow state, because it deeply connects individuals with the collective, is that it's like being on a river. It will take you where it's going, not necessarily where you want to go, but you have agency in how you're going to steer, and you might have agency in maybe taking a different path at times. So the first step So there's seven simple steps. And the first step is to pause into stillness. And it sounds so simple, is so important because without that, none of the other steps happen. And so the pause can be, even like a second, right? As long as there's a pause. What tends to happen, and this is part of effortless healing, what tends to happen is something's happening. And actually, even before it finishes happening, we often already know how we're going to react, right? Oftentimes in a conversation, someone's speaking, and it's like the other person is ready to speak in response before that person has even finished their thought. So there's the ancient Chinese wisdom is to pause. So when we pause and we come into this deeply observant state, we're not judging what they're saying. We're not thinking about what we're going to say. We are listening and receiving in a way that is very generous, that is very open. And without judgment, we're just like, oh, wow, I'm really curious. What are they going to say? You know? And from that state, we begin to receive more information. And so we may respond with nothing except our presence. We may respond in a way that's different than what we might be thinking of responding. And so there's that saying, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And when I was on my deep healing journey, which is continuing, it was very much a kind of a motivator, like, okay, just, not a big leap, just a small step every day. And when you go back to the original Chinese, Lao Tzu's writings, it's more accurately translated as the journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath your feet. So the process begins with being. So you center yourself, you fully come centered, you connect to your feet, you connect to the earth below, like you're supported by something much, much bigger than yourself. So just by pausing and being, something is already happening. So that's really the key to that. And each of these steps at the end of the chapters, I have a little one-line summary. And so the one-line summary of that is like, in the pause, everything begins. Right. So a lot of effortless healing is paradoxical.
For me, that is not as educated in all these philosophies as you are. Still, the pause symbolizes two things. First, pause means it's an interrupter. So whatever my mind is usually doing, the continuous judgment, the continuous thinking process, it stops through the pause. And the other function that for me, as the pause has, is it creates space. Because if I'm pausing and I'm not doing or being anything, then there is suddenly space. And I think that connects beautifully to what you described. How can I start my journey if there isn't this moment of me interrupting the journey of 1,000 steps, interrupting what I'm doing right now and creating the space to go on this journey. So that in my everyday language would be what a pause symbolizes. So it's not as eloquently said as you did, but even with common sense, it makes perfect sense to me to say this is important, no matter how simple it sounds. It doesn't sound like a great insight, but it actually is, because without that, nothing will ever happen, right?
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, and pausing into what? Pausing into stillness. That there's a stillness that is deep within us, and it's everywhere, right? It contains the movement of everything. And so the more and more, like, pausing into stillness could actually just be the one step that summarizes everything. If
Right.
we really, really understood that, not just in concept, but in the body, in the experience, we would be done. Like that's basically it in a nutshell.
Mm.
And talk about shutting down a lot of extra programs. So some of the programs are like inflammatory, right? Some of them are like I was mentioning earlier, like trauma, really, really difficult experiences of survival or perceived need to survive when we were young. And so those start running. But a lot of the programs are like what I was just sharing was like this program that's always running where the mind is always thinking and then already going to respond.
Mm.
And so that's where we become our own, we become a very complex and entangled advocate for our own healing because those are just subconscious programs. We already think we know how we're going to react. And there's a relief that a lot of people feel when they can, again, even for 30 seconds, right? Listening to a guided meditation and then the meditation stops and they're just in stillness. Even if it's 30 seconds, it can feel like a relief because guess what? Suddenly we've given ourselves permission and we've learned how to turn off those programs. So tremendous energy can come from that, tremendous vitality. And then, as you're saying, this tremendous freedom, this spaciousness. It's like, oh my God, I have space. Step 2 is soften your intentions. No need to totally let them go, right? So, and I can focus on healing, on individual healing, but we could, someone listening could also think about collective healing. But again, everything begins with ourselves. So even softening the intention to try to heal, the communities, heal the planet is okay. You know what? Let's soften that a little bit, return to ourselves. Intentions are wonderful to set in terms of like, okay, I want to practice Qigong and I need to, to be a little bit more disciplined about it. Or I want to heal and I'm going to begin to investigate what it is that I need to do. So those are all wonderful and they're wonderful steps into the door. But then once we cross that door and once we're kind of, walking this path, can we soften what it is that we think is our goal? Can we soften what we think is our path? Because when what happens with the way that the conscious mind connects with the emotional brain, right? The limbic system in the center of the brain, and the limbic system connects with the whole hormone axis and the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system. So when we are really, really strongly holding on to the intention to heal, whatever that means to us, we begin over time, again, chronically, we begin to block the body from coming into a flow state. We begin to block the body from even coming into a relaxation state. So relaxation and flow are different. Relaxation, parasympathetic, a lot of people have heard about that now, rest and digest or rest and restore. Then you have sympathetic, fight or flight, stress. And we often hear it like it's very dualistic. And so relaxation is wonderful. It's not the flow state. It's a low energy state. But it is the portal. It's important. And then flow state, which a lot of Qigong practitioners have experienced, is the activated calm state. So it's calm, it's relaxed, it's open, deeply observant, and it's activated, right? So there's a vitality to it as it's a higher energy state. And that's why healing can happen much more quickly in the flow state. So if we can understand the science also of the energetics of these fields, which I can show you a few simple images later from the book, is that that the healing happens as a side effect. So just being in the embodied flow state, it is a healing state. In fact, it's a peak healing state, right? So we hear a lot about psychological flow and peak activity, peak performance. This is peak healing. So all the systems become integrated as one. So going back to the phone analogy with the apps, it's like whatever apps you do have open, they're all synced up and integrated and they're functioning as one so that all the data is consolidated instead of separate apps. And that's what happens with the body. So the inner systems become synced up and they're just humming along, optimally functioning so that whether you're doing your Qigong practice, whether it's foods that you're choosing to eat and not to eat, whether it's supplements, herbs, could be a treatment like acupuncture, osteopathy, the body can receive that in a much more coherent, efficient, effective way. And then whatever the body doesn't need is not serving that highest purpose. It can also discern, like, okay, you know what? Like that's not useful. So it's a profound state. So softening the intentions, the one-line summary for that is the softer the grip, the firmer the opening.
Imagine a tool where you will learn the basics of Shineng Qigong in 101 lessons
Hello, everyone.
Hoy, realmente tu práctica es muy excelente.
and discover 4,000 years of ancient Chinese wisdom. Available in English,
Before we talk about Jineng Qigong specifically,
Spanish,
La palabra Qigong se compone de dos partes.
German,
Qigong ist also nicht nur eine Reihe von Übungen.
and Dutch.
Historisch gezien bestaan Qigong-praktijken in vele omgevingen.
You can use it as a simple web page or like an app on your phone on the go, where you connect and communicate with teachers of your choice. And find workshops worldwide. Welcome to myqigong.com, brought to you by the Shineng Qigong Students Hub, for free.
Right. And I like that you say that, because we have to make sure when you say softening the intention, it doesn't mean forget about the intention or let it go completely. It just means, if I exaggerate it, don't be obsessive about it, because then you're just like fully you're hindering the flow, because you're so strongly trying to get somewhere, and that is actually in the way of the natural flow. So you're basically, I like how you put it with the grip, because a soft grip doesn't mean you're not taking the how do you call this, the
The portal?
yeah, the porter. It means you do hold it and you do open, but in a very a sovereign way versus a panicky way. And I think this is kind of what I'm getting from what you're saying, again, in my everyday language here. It's not about giving up your intention. It's not about saying, oh, it doesn't matter. No, you are your intention at that moment, but without any effort. It's an effortless way of manifesting the intention, and I totally get why this is so, because you were describing very nicely what's actually going on in the body, and how the whole organism works, and it can only functioning well if we don't put any blockages in between and don't put any pressure. And I think that's in my words what you're describing here, right?
Yes. And, as a doctor working with a lot of people, there's so much information that they have, and they're trying to sort out what is important for their next step. And we need to recognize that what we know is so limited also, right? Even though it feels like there's so much information, what we know compared to what we don't know is just a drop in the ocean. And so just like step one, this one creates more space. So each one is kind of deepening into more and more space and stillness and just observing. And so there might be something that shows up that we never considered, in terms of the healing path, or it becomes very clear. So what happens to the brain in flow is that intuition becomes much more heightened. And so there might just be a really deep knowing, like, oh, you know what? I thought I was going to do this, but actually, you know what? I'm going to try this diet instead. So it again feels counterintuitive or counterlogical, paradoxical. And yet the more we can soften, the more we can pause. And then the next step, empty the mind, like those are just kind of softening things. And then this one is completely like, okay, empty, is that more can show up because we're just creating more space. So emptying the mind. And at the end of each of these chapters, I have a method, right, that can also help drop. And then there's also corresponding videos with really cool special effects that one of my dear friends made, audios and videos to accompany these, like, oh, what does it feel like? What might it feel like to pause into stillness? And then that's like the inner observer breathing, right? And then what does it feel? How do we pause into stillness? And oh, or I mean, how do we soften our intentions? And that's like the inner smile, right? We begin to smile at these intentions that are very well-meaning, but can be very
Yes.
narrow, very, very narrow. So then empty the mind. The one-line statement for that is it couples with La Chi, or open and close, which was deeply helpful for me to empty the mind, right? Because my mind was always going, was to empty the mind, mind the emptiness. So that it gave my mind, you know, we again, if we fight the thinking mind, we're creating more resistance. And that's often what we do. Oh, gotta suppress those thoughts. Oh my God, there's those thoughts again. We judge. And then meditation itself becomes this like mini battlefield. So we create more challenges for ourselves. Well, Zen and Qigong was a godsend because I was like, oh, I can, you know, I can partner with my thinking mind. This gives my mind something to do. So I focus on the emptiness, right? Whether it's between my palms and my lower dantian, the vast emptiness, and of course, all of it merges into one for those who practice more and more. And so there's a natural quieting of the mind. And that's what I mean is like these steps they're built in. So like I don't have to think about what is my resistance in the mind. If I practice in the way that these beautiful methods were intended, there's a natural quieting of the resistance. And so it's powerful. It's really powerful. And then the next step is open the heart, right? So, okay, mind open now, open the heart. And the heart, and what I've really come to understand about the essence of the Tao heart, right? Or the collective heart, the universal heart in Zen and Qigong is that our individual heart merges with this universal heart. It's like becomes one and the same. But again, we start with our own heart fields. And so, oh, this is where I can actually show you an image. So whereas the mind, the true mind can get really, really buried under tons and tons of thoughts, right? The heart can get really buried under tons and tons of strong emotions. And so what is that? Like the lightheartedness, the pure-heartedness that is always spoken about is not this moral innocence, right? It's this energetic radiance. So how do we release that? So that in neuroscience, we know that this is just the EMF field, the electromagnetic field of the heart. So it's a measurable field, at least the effects of the field are measurable. But in Qigong, we've been practicing with fields that are much subtler, right? So this is a really useful thing to know is that the EMF field of the heart is about 100 times bigger than that of the brain. So it's a, you know, and it goes around us like a toroid, a toroidal fountain. So it's just, you know, bathing us, infusing us in this continual shower. So when we're really contracted emotionally or physically or mentally, the heart field can become blocked. And so again, these practices that we have, so much of you know, lift chi up, pour chi down is just opening the heart to flow. So much of body mind is also about opening up the heart field. And then the Mingzhi practice, the pure consciousness practices we focus a lot on consciousness being in the brain, but the Chinese word for mind, Xing, is actually heart and mind, not the thinking mind, the true mind. And so in neuroscience now, we know that the heart and the brain, when they are in coherence, when they're in flow, they sync up as one organ. They just hum like they're one. And so the practices really guide us into that. And the next step is inhabit the body. And the one-line summary for the heart is gratitude is the attitude of an open heart. So we talk a lot about how gratitude becomes not a practice to do, but a natural side effect of a heart that is coherent. So you begin to experience everything as an opportunity to connect.
I would like to ask one clarifying question here, Cynthia, because as you just said, we know long from Chinese wisdom, but also from neuroscience now that there's a strong connection between the heart and the brain, and but you have you're kind of separated into two steps. Yeah, empty the brain, empty the heart. I would assume that if you do one, it would automatically have already a big effect on the other, right?
Yes. And if you can come into that state of flow, they all sync up. So the three dantian, we talk about the upper, the middle, and the lower dantian. So conceptually, we can talk about separate things. We can talk about the brain, the heart, and the body. They're really one, right? So, but conceptually, it can help us, right? If we have something that we feel like, oh, I feel a lot of resistance in my head, we can practice more focused on upper dantian.
Right.
So, and again, some of these practices that are the methods that are at the end of each of these chapters, they can apply to all of them. So what I see each of these steps as is they can be separate, but they're all portals into the same experience.
Right.
Right. So like if I feel really stuck somehow in my brain, I'm just like, okay, it's easier for me to connect with my heart. Okay, maybe that's my portal, right? Maybe that's my portal, and I begin there. Or yeah, after years of practicing Zen and Qigong, I finally realized, oh my God, I'm moving my body, but I'm not really inhabiting it, because it was difficult. But then what happened was I continued to practice, and then it naturally happens, right? Because each thing is just a portal into the other.
Right.
Everything is integrated. And so any of the methods, you're exactly right, can bring us there. They can bring us there. So inhabiting the body, there are a lot of different ways to approach the body in Qigong. I did not focus on the Qi body. I was really focusing on the physical vessel, because I felt like that was the part, both myself and also patients that I've worked with. And I also coach Qigong students. I just see over and over again, because a lot of people are coming in for deep healing, but the body has not been a safe place for a long time. And so even with opening the heart, emptying the mind, we can bypass, we can dissociate. And it's like, no, your physical vessel, in fact, the more you empty your mind and it expands, and the more you open your heart and it expands, you need a really strong physical vessel to ground it. And so and it's important to take care of the body as we're increasing in energy. So yeah, inhabiting the body is like, okay, so I mean, I have standing meditation for that. And going back to the Lao Tzu, philosophy about the journey begins beneath your feet, with standing meditation, it's so grounding. And then you're connecting also to the earth that is supporting you. And so there's a really powerful way in which we can drop into the body. And what I realized, this was just in reflection recently. It didn't happen when I wrote the book. And as I said, the book kind of came to me. Oh, I didn't even share this part. The instruction came to me, but then the book kind of just got channeled through. Like these are the steps, and then this is how you're going to write it. And so when I was looking at when I was beginning to write this, was like, oh yeah, we really, really need to focus on the physical body. And looking at all the steps, I realized all of them are practices in surrender. They're practices in surrender. And so I use this phrase throughout each chapter. It's like, it's an invitation and a dare, right? It's both. It depends on how you relate to it. Does it feel scary or does it feel inviting? But they're all surrender. And I just realized, like, we're great at filling things up, right? And trying new things. And, and I want to add this to my life. And even with diet, it's like people can add things much more easily. They can take supplements. But the giving up of something, really challenging. mentally giving up something, right? Giving up your thoughts, giving up your thinking, it feels like death, feels like loss of control. Opening your heart when you've been hurt so much, and look at what's going on in the world today. Open your heart. So each of these, yeah, it was fascinating. I was like, whoa. So where we're really blocked in terms of flow, right? Flow is this wave. So we go up and we go down, we go up and down. And we're great at going up. We do not like to go down. And so I found it fascinating. I was like, wow, each of these steps is really just about surrendering. And if we can surrender, and then we can remain mind empty, or I wasn't mind emptier, right? So empty can be a really far goal, but each one is incremental. Mind emptier, heart more open, body more inhabited, that life can then flow into us. So it's not even like, okay, what am I going to do next? Okay, I've surrendered that. I've emptied that. What am I going to do next? It's like, no, you're still observing. What's showing up? What's coming to me? And then how do I respond? So it's really, in that sense, and that's why it's effortless. It depends on how we relate to surrender, right? Because surrender truly is just letting go. So it's effortless. And then what happens, the other part of the effortless dimension is that healing does happen and you're still living your life, you're still making choices and whatnot, but it's almost like it's happening to you. And that's a very common experience for a lot of people. And certainly for me. And, and then the healing that I had was tremendously fast. Like what I thought was going to take years happened over a few months. Was like, whoa, what is happening? Like something's happening to me. I'm still doing my appointments. I'm still, watching my diet. I'm still deciding what herbs or supplements to take, what medicines. And yet something feels so easeful. And that's a quality. And that's a quality that a lot of people have also when they're practicing Qigong, right? In the beginning, it might be effortful. Like you're trying to do standing meditation and it's just grit, it's like, I'm going to do it. And then over time, like, the arms become more like qi. Oh, can I allow the qi field to support my arm? There becomes this effortlessness because of the surrender. So the discomfort that comes with Qigong practices, those are moments to practice surrender, right? We can fight it and we can push through it. It doesn't feel good. It also blocks the deep potential. But if we can surrender, it becomes a whole different experience. So I do feel like the Qigong practices they're profound in that they're mini practices, not even mini practice, they're potent practices for daily life, right? So how do we meet that? It's like, oh, I know how to do that because when I was holding my arms up that time and it was freaking really, really, heavy and intense, I could breathe into it. I didn't leave the pain. I went into it. And then, pain shows up, in a relationship, in my body, in world news. Oh, I know how to, I remember what that's like. I know how to do this. I've been practicing every day. So the patterns in our bodies, these programs we were talking about, it's not just that we close down unnecessary ones. We change the programs that are running. And they become very empowered. They become very efficient. And instead of meeting, right, difficulties with resistance, we know how to release the resistance, and then we also know how to transform. Because we're just deeply observing ourselves.
Right.
And then the next step is tap into the collective, and this is a whole other dimension. And it's really about, I feel like this is the call of this time because we are so interconnected by technology and travel, that this is the opportunity. So, as I mentioned, as I showed earlier, right, the collective field, the EMF field of the heart is several feet out. And so when we're standing side by side, right, we're standing in each other's fields, like literally. And so what that looks like from above, right, is this Venn diagram. And some people who are, who understand like sacred geometries, like these things have been passed down for a long, long time. So it's these heart fields. And then what happens, like if there are many people, right, you might recognize that as a mandala, as the flower of life. It's this other beautiful sacred geometry. And so the coherence, right, means cohere means to stick together, cohere. And what happens, right? I talked about in the individual body, the organs begin to, and the cells, they begin to cohere. They function as one. They stick together. And it happens also on scale. So if I'm in coherence and I'm sitting right next to you and you're not, I can bring you into coherence without you doing anything, right? So it depends on my capacity to stay coherent when you're not.
Yeah.
It also depends on our relationship. So trust is a really big issue. So if groups have been practicing together for a long time, it's huge, right? There's a trust. And then that's also where theory, right, and information can be really helpful is, they can help us trust the practice more.
Mm.
And so if you can imagine, and it's not just, right, 2D bubbles, it's 3D, it's 4D, it's moving in time, it's in flow. So a group in coherence is very, very stable, much more stable than incoherence, which is anxiety, fear, anger, and all those reactivity states. And so there's a tremendous opportunity to amplify that. And then through Qigong, because, practitioners have been tapping into fields that are much subtler. Again, it's like everything's connected. Everyone is connected. So that my own individual healing, if we understand that as law of energy, law of information, law of the heart, my own healing will affect the whole, period. It's not like I heal myself and then I can go do this for other
Right.
people.
Right.
Right. That's the old model. You restore yourself and then you go, and then you drain yourself and then you go restore. So a lot of people have done that with Qigong. I certainly have done that too.
Mm.
When I really understood the laws of energy and the laws of the heart, I was like, oh my God, no, my healing is the healing of the whole.
Yeah.
And then can I respond to other people? Yes, I can. But can I do it from a state of coherence? And then we can reach out. All we need is consciousness to connect to this field that is, beyond time and space. It's just ever present. So the field can support us. Like if I'm feeling totally frazzled and I can't think straight, then, can I empty my mind, open my heart, inhabit my body such that I can tap into the collective and allow wisdom teachers, other practitioners to lift me up, to help me harmonize.
This is a beautiful way of looking at it because first of all, it means that you stay in your field of coherence.
Yes.
And secondly, you are not really doing something to another when you do your healing work. It is the mere presence that is radiating your coherent state that will somehow influence the field of the other person and then bring that field into coherent state as well. It's a little bit like when you put a magnet close to some iron. It's the field of the magnet doesn't work on the iron. It's the simple fact that it has this field, this magnetic field that will have an influence on the iron. And I think that's kind of what you're doing there as well. And this is why you're not draining any energy if you're doing this kind of healing work, because you're not really doing it on someone. You're just staying in your own beautiful presence here, and that has the effect.
Yes, and it's and that is primary, right? So to use your magnet metaphor, it's like the magnet can also move closer to the iron, right? And then it can have a different effect and it can respond to its environment. So we can do the same thing. Primary is, what is the inner state? Are you in coherence? Are you embodying flow? And because even going back to what we were saying about listening, I'm still working with patients, right? You and I are talking on this podcast. We, might be leading Qigong. We go to the supermarket, just ordinary things. We can be radiating that wherever we go, but it changes the experience of life. Also, things become more playful. There are many more surprises, because you're just more aware, you're paying attention, and you're not judging. It's almost like being a child who's just waking up to a whole new world, waking up to you're like, these are my hands, I'm moving them, and kind of instead of just kind of doing the Qigong practices, I was like, oh my God. Like, so there's a sense of rebirth. And that's again, the other paradox. The emptiness is the abundance. They go hand in hand. It's not either or. So yeah, can we be where we are and radiate and know that there's a healing effect? And at the same time, we can go out in the world and we can respond. But what we know from this, the energy, the laws of energy and laws of the heart also is that what we tend to do now, because it feels like there's one crisis after another, is to respond. We got to respond now, right? And so we're responding again from a place of goodwill, perhaps, but there's very strong judgments on what we'll just call it two sides of what's happening on the global stage. Two sides, each feeling, kind of so convinced that that's the right way. And it's a state of incoherence. And so there's tremendous resistance. So understanding that, can we respond in a way of coherence? So I also call in the book, because the doing nothing, the effortless doing, the state of, doing nothing is often misinterpreted as idleness or passivity. And it's like, no, this is peak healing state. This is then also peak activism state. So we become fully, because we're tapped into the collective as well, we begin to tune into the collective harmony. What can I do? What is my response that will bring greater coherence to the whole, not just to my life, to the whole? Because if it's just to my life, if we know that image, we understand that everything is connected. It's not a longer lasting harmony. It is a very isolated one that will dissipate. So, it changes our whole perspective as well, but always starting with the inner state. And sure, if we're in an acute situation where we're not, where there's danger, either personally or with someone else, we respond. And sometimes we might not always be in that coherent state. We're just reacting to helping that person get out of danger. And then, you come right back into that state. But the more that we practice, the thing about coherence, the more that we practice, and this, of course, speaks to Qigong, the more it becomes our default state, because that's the program that we're building. That's the program we're writing. So then, what? An acute crisis happens, we respond in coherence. So we're totally open. We are paying attention. We're getting intuitive signals. Our body's feeling good. It's not contracted. We're not holding the weight of the world on our shoulders. Everything kind of opens. And then the heart field will also continue to harmonize what is in front of us.
We have covered a lot of ground, Cynthia. I must say I'm very proud of us that we actually managed to get through all these steps, and I'm very excited. The book is only published now, right? When this episode is released, then people can get the book. Is it available internationally, or is it only in the US?
Yeah, it releases on May 1st.
Perfect.
And it's on various outlets, including Amazon, I believe, internationally. There, at least in the States here, it's available on other outlets for people who want to choose other places. So, but it's really it feels like a gift from the field to the field.
Well, that's a wonderful way of putting it. And I can't wait to hold one copy in my hands. Cynthia, it was lovely
I'd love
to talk
give
to
you
you.
a copy.
And
So
And hopefully I can see you one day so we can sign it. And that would be very, very nice, Cynthia. So thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom and your expertise here. And I love how you bring modern science into the picture, because as you said, it makes it more accessible to people. This is not just some airy-fairy ideas of Chinese people 4,000 years ago. It is actually something that is rooted in today's knowledge of what we know from science. And I think that makes it all the more convincing. Although even if it wasn't, I mean, you and I and other practitioners know, how it's working and that it is working because we have these experiences. But adding the scientific dimension to it, I think is a great way of also reaching a broader audience of people that are not so familiar with Qigong. So I wish you good luck with this book, and I hope many, many people will benefit from it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cynthia.
We trust you enjoyed this conversation, and we invite you to subscribe to our podcast so we can stay in touch and notify you of future episodes. We will end today's episode with the 8 verses meditation performed by Jining Qigong teacher Katrin Hendricks. Enjoy. To get your free ebook on the 8 verses meditation, please check the show notes below.